Hello everyone, and today I am talking about The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. Now, if you caught my review on Wind Waker, the main drive of this game, very funnily enough, is that fans wanted a more mature-looking, realistic-esque Zelda that looked like a more mature RPG, kind of like a Lord of the Rings vibe. I feel is what people really wanted. And people really did not like Wind Waker's style, despite Wind Waker being a really good game. So they were like, okay, well, fine, we'll give you what we want. And they tried to went back to Ocarina's aesthetic, or the ideas of Ocarina's aesthetic, and make something more along those lines. So I remember, oh my god, the E3 trailer for this game was insane. Like, I was as hyped as the room that people were in, where, it said things like, shields will shatter, blades will bleed. And it finally showed Link as a hyper-realistic, version of himself. And everyone was so freaking excited. It's like, you see him, rushing down the fields of Hyrule on his horse, using his sword. And people thought, okay, this is going to be the game. This is going to be the game that's going to, break the generation. And quite a few games of my favorite series in the 7th gen really did not do well, and this was one of them. My favorite franchises were, Zelda, Sonic, and Halo, and Halo 3, Sonic 06, and Twilight Princess were all things that looked good on paper and were super hyped up and super advertised and sounded and looked great. And then when you got down to play them, you were like, oh boy. I mean, Sonic 06, there's nothing as bad as Sonic 06, but these other ones, they were like, oh yeah, it's Zelda, it's Halo, it's this old franchise, but it's just a little different. And it's trying to be something that it's not, and it's trying to be kind of pandery, maybe. And it's just not good. It's just not fun. I mean, it's not terrible by any means, but gosh darn, what we wanted was something as insane and as intense as Ocarina, and we just didn't get that. And I think it goes into, the psychology of making games, making stories, or in general, what makes a good game, what makes a good story. Because again, everything they were giving us all sounded good on paper, but the game itself kind of underdelivered. I mean, there were parts of Twilight Princess that I really, really liked and really, really enjoyed, but gosh, it just was. There were other parts that were just forced and weird and offbeat, and I don't know if it's because this is the odd game out or the even game out, and they had, before this there was, Majora's Mask and then Wind Waker, and then they went back to the Majora's Mask formula for this one. But I don't know, man, it just did not feel right. So, what are the highlights of Twilight Princess? Well, what's the setup actually? So, in this one, you are just Link, a guy living in this random village in the countryside, and it basically gets attacked, almost Lord of the Rings style. So, yeah, goblins or orcs or whatever attack and kidnap the villagers, and you have to go after them. And so, basically, in the process of going after them, you are essentially sent into this dark world, or this Twilight realm. So again, we see the return of kind of the idea of a dark world from Link to the Past. And in this Twilight world, between worlds, Link is transformed into a wolf for some reason. I don't know why, but this is the thing they went with. And honestly, I think it's pretty cool. Wolf Link is pretty iconic. I like his design. And of course, Wolf Link would not be complete without his assistant Midna, who is your kind of guide in this game. So, we had Navi, and then in Wind Waker we had the King of Red Lions, and in this game we have Midna, who is a very, I would say, welcome companion. She is full of spunk. She's very nosy, very mischievous. And very interesting, too, because she becomes a main character in the game. She's not just a companion, but also is very much involved with the overall story at large, similar to the King of Red Lions, I suppose, in a way. But even more so. So this is an interesting one. I think when I think of the Twilight Realm, I can kind of see Majora's Mask's kind of energy shine through, in the sense that it's off-putting, it's weird, it's strange, and it's supposed to be. It's not just supposed to be dark and evil. It's supposed to be this odd, weird place that shouldn't really exist. And so the places where you go in the Twilight Realm are basically just the normal places of Hyrule, but now they're filled with Twilight, and the entire aesthetic of the world has changed. There are different enemies, there are different, sounds. Everything sounds distorted and strange, and basically the whole world is just different, I suppose. And in the course of that, you basically go between, well, actually, so unlike Link to the Past, the Twilight world is not readily traveled to. You basically are only sent to the Twilight world when you have to solve a certain puzzle. Usually you have to collect these tears of light from the gods of the land, and then use those to dispel the Twilight and return the world to the form as it was. So it actually is similar-ish to the Dark World, but it's very, very different in terms of its execution. It's not meant to be lived in and inhabited. It's supposed to kind of be solved, and then you really never see it again, which I thought was kind of a shame. I think writing Epona or like some kind of thing along the fields of a Twilight Hyrule would be very cool. Which brings me to my highlight of this game is the fact that you can get on horseback, you can bring out your sword, and you have horseback battles in the middle of this massive field, and it is very, very epic and cool. And you have this long running confrontation with this character called King Bokoblin, who rides his giant armored warthog. And, that was kind of the selling point of this game. It would just look so friggin' epic and cool. And you have this huge duel on the bridge. And I would say Twilight Princess looks fairly nice. I would say the world looks fairly nice. And Link looks very cool as well. I think his artwork, though, the artwork that they made for Twilight Princess Link is top tier. In terms of all the designs, I'd say it's even better than Ocarina. Twilight Princess Link's design is just hyper realistic, and there's a certain mood and energy that it oozes that is just very different from its contemporaries, and it's exactly what people wanted. And I think that's the main issue, is that Zelda is always a very kind of lighthearted series. It has a duality of different aspects. It has silly moments, happy moments, all kinds of different moments, and it's not just all super serious. And I think that's what people wanted from this game, and that's why it kind of, I think, failed in the eyes of some people, because it did have those silly moments, but with the serious aspect and just other things that just felt off about the game. Maybe because this was a cross-platform game, there was a version released for the GameCube, and I think the more popular and more played version on the Wii, because it utilized the Wiimote to swing your sword, and the beginning of the waggling age was upon us. And as we can see, even fishing uses, the waggling aesthetic to it. That being said, however, so on the Wii, the waggling aspect was never really an issue. I mean, the game worked just as fine. And, if I prefer it on GameCube or Wii, I've never played the GameCube version, but I can't comment on that. What I can comment on that's very interesting, that is maybe a lore discrepancy, is that the GameCube version of this game, Link is left-handed, as he always has been, but in the right-handed version of this game, and the Wii version of this game, he's right-handed, and what they did to compensate for that is they actually flipped the entire game world. So if you're ever watching a playthrough of a GameCube version or a Wii version that you're unfamiliar with, it might look very strange to you, because they actually did just a horizontal flip of everything. I guess there must be just a Control-All for that kind of thing, and it's very kind of odd, frankly. And of course, they did that for user access, so more people will be comfortable using that gameplay style because most people are right-handed. We also have the return of the Gorons and the Zora in this game, but the Kokiris are nowhere to be seen. Neither are the Koroks. Also, it just feels a little bit odd how Link moves in this game, I've realized. It doesn't feel natural. Sometimes he's very fluid, sometimes he's very stiff. It just seems a bit off. One thing I also just have to mention, because it is extremely, how would I say, strange and just useless. I mean, Zelda's always had a problem with its late game adding actually useful items and things to it. Like, for example, in in Link to the Past, the last few dungeon items are just stronger armors that just do less and less damage for enemies, which is kind of lame. And there kind of is a thing in this game which could have been cool, which is that one of the last armors you get in this game is the Royal Rupee armor, and it's super, super cool because when you take damage, you actually lose rupees instead of health. The problem is, though, is that it is constantly draining your rupees just by wearing it. So you could be standing in a field and not get hit once by the enemy, and you would still lose like 50 or 100 rupees, which really calls into question what is the point of this armor. That being said, its design is really cool, and we wouldn't see something like that until maybe Breath of the Wild. But anyway, back to Twilight Princess. So Midna is probably the main pull of this game. She is the most interesting character. She is essentially the queen of the Twilight realm and the contested ruler of it. They also introduce a new antagonist in this game, Zant, who is a very actually cool character for the most part. He's a little bit quirky and silly by the end of the game, but he's very interesting and menacing for the first part because he's very much in control and seditious, and a wonderful complement to the typical just Link versus Ganon setup. And even speaking on that, there's a weird fan theory, or a theory I have, that the way this game ends is kind of odd because it seems like Zant is still in control of things at the end of the game, and then it's just never brought up again. And so I guess it doesn't really matter because we haven't gotten a sequel to this game or a direct sequel. But I just thought that was interesting. He's an interesting character for sure. So again, the game is pretty standard. You have your first set of dungeons that you do, and then you reach the half point, and then you have to do another set of dungeons to restore a certain item to complete the rest of the game. And so it follows a pretty standard Zelda formula. What I did not like, though, actually, now that I think about it, is, well, one thing I didn't like the end. God, I really hated the last temple. One, because it's inhabited by these Okos or something, or these like half cuckoo, half human things, which are just creepy as hell to look at. And you have to go through this whole side quest to get this cannon to even get there. And actually, I soft locked my game by doing like this one glitch that I didn't realize I was doing, where if you like get this cannon, oh my god. Yeah, I actually had to, thank God I saved at like the half point of the game, but I had to restart my whole thing to the half point, because when you get the cannon from like the area or from this underground area and then send it off to where it has to go, if you save in that room and then quit the game, the essentially exit portal that you would take to get out of there despawns, and you're actually stuck in this room and there's nothing you can do about it. And that actually happened to me. I was so pissed. Oh my god. It was actually insane. I couldn't believe that it actually happened. And I couldn't believe it's an actual glitch that just like occurs. Like, oh yeah, this just happens. It's like of all the 999 things to do, just don't do this. And I was the one person who did it, probably out of like 10 or 20. Oh my god, it was so painful and stupid. But in any case, that's why kids, you make multiple saves always. Also on that, the whole save system, I really hate the aesthetic of the main menu of this game. It feels like it's being thrown back to like I love the intro menu and everything, but when you get into the actual menu and the sound effects and the aesthetic of it, it just looks awful. It looks like the original like Legend of Zelda thing, but just bad and worse in some way. It's really odd. And so eventually, as you go through the story, you will be able to transform into Wolf-Link at will, and that's always a cool thing because Wolf-Link has his own little set of moves and skills. One thing I do have to say, the designs of the pose in this game are really, really cool. They have like a little scythe thing going on, and they're really, really nifty. And Wolf-Link is able to basically collect their souls as he destroys them and kills them, and he, basically can trade them in for other items. What's also cool about this game is also the environments. There is a castle town market that looks more like an actual castle town, with a bustling bazaar and all this other stuff. Hyrule Castle is also this massive place that you go to near the end of the game, and it is like a whole dungeon. It has courtyards and a whole multi-layered thing. It's a very cool dungeon. It's a lot of fun. The first dungeon in this game kind of sucks, and the rest of them are just kind of weird. The second dungeon is like whatever. The third one is actually pretty interesting. It's this underwater one, and they have this giant rotating water staircase that allows you to access different parts of the map of the dungeon. It's probably one of the least frustrating water levels I definitely played in a Zelda game. There are some very cool moments in this game as well. You come to this Wild West town that's essentially been abandoned, and what happens is you basically it starts it off in this like you use your Wiimote to equip the bow, and you have to take out this town, and you have to kill all the enemies in the town. And it plays this funky Wild West mix up. It's actually a lot of fun. I actually kept a save just to replay that one section, and I'm sure that helped inspire things like Zelda's crossbow or Link's crossbow training, which was like a weird, like separate game entirely, but on like a mini game that they just sold. That was really weird, and they tried to turn it into something like, I felt like they were copying the mercenaries from Resident Evil 4. Like that's what I had in my mind. And they sold it as on a disc with like no cover, or like a little cover, but not like a proper plastic cover. It was a weird time for Nintendo, I suppose. Another thing I really like about this game is the lantern. I thought the lantern making its return was really cool. I like the fact that it has your own little, oil meter and stuff, and it really adds to the atmosphere. Just having that lantern with you when you go through the Lost Woods, I thought it was really, really cool. Again, Twilight Princess, it has its own sound effects and its own series of, aesthetics and whatever. And while I think it looks good for the most part, I just find, along with the main menu, I think it's not just the visual, but it's honestly the audio of this game. It just sounds crunchy and weird and just very odd. I really don't like the audio design of Twilight Princess, at least in the menu and interactions. The world itself and the enemies are pretty fine themselves. I think it really shines in terms of audio in the Twilight realm. Not only the enemies, but the music and the changes to the tone are really, really interesting. Also, oh my god, my favorite area in this game actually has to be the desert section, in which you essentially have to go across the Gerudo Desert, and you have to make it to, essentially what is more or less the Spirit Temple version in this game. And it is just a super, super cool area. There are little enemy encampments. It almost reminds me of Metal Gear Solid 5, to be honest. It's a lot of fun, actually. And I love how they really took that aspect of the Gerudo culture in this game and just kind of made their whole kind of, the whole slightly different thing with it. I'm really thinking more so of Ganondorf's design in this game. I just think Ganondorf's design in this game, along with Link's, is super, super cool, and the implication they have for the characterization of Ganondorf is he is a like badass warlord in this game. He is very, very different from how he's portrayed. Usually he's like an evil guy and like a, you know, mischievous mastermind, but here he is like a lot more physical. And I guess on that point, the final fight of this game is an absolute joy. It is absolutely a highlight to play, and I probably replayed the final of the fight of this game multiple times because it is just so much fun. And honestly, I know the word's been used a lot, but epic. It is an epic final boss fight, a multi-stage fight. It's just really. How the story develops with Wolflink and the Twilight Realm and Midna is fairly interesting, but I felt like it was a little bit also underdeveloped. It's kind of like, yeah, okay, we get that, you know, this is, you know, the Twilight Princess and this is the Twilight Realm. And I think, oh yeah, I forgot about Zelda in this game. She also plays a role, but again, everything is also very, I don't know. Zelda in this game is very different. She is kind of like, you know, she's hidden, she's like lost away and kept away inside the tower. And so Midna kind of makes up for a lot of the, you know, the lack of Zelda or female, you know, sidekick energy. Zelda herself is kind of more so morose because she lives in this land covered by twilight where everyone's souls are kind of captured. And it's funny too how Midna kind of becomes a really alter or an alternative to Zelda, especially near the end of the game when you see how much they've developed a companionship. It's kind of like taking that Navi relationship and really trying to deepen it with Link. There are also some very cool cutscenes in this game. I'm thinking of the mid part where Link is being shown the Triforce and how it's corrupted, you know, in the Golden Land. It was just, there are some cutscenes that are just really, really cool and honestly kind of creepy, to be honest with you. There's one dungeon in this game that's really cool. It's like an abandoned mansion, and you basically, you know, up in the mountains, and you have to like do all these puzzles in it, and there's giant haunted pieces of armor that move. That's a lot of fun, and also you also get one of my favorite items in the entire Zelda series, I think, which is the ball and chain. The ball and chain is stupid. It is ridiculous. It just kills so many things, and it's just this ridiculous thing that Link can even wield. It is this massive thing that makes me think back even to Link to the Past when you first free Zelda. There's that knight with the ball and chain. That's pretty much where they got the idea from. It's like, well, what haven't we done? And that was it. I also really like the spinner in this game. The spinner is unfortunately, it's only really useful in the dungeon or where it can latch onto tracks, which is sometimes in the Hyrule field. But the spinner is just the dumbest, stupidest, funnest thing. It's basically a Beyblade you ride on. I just think it's a pretty cool concept, and I do like it. And the boss fight in that temple is iconic. It is so much fun to do it. I love these giant boss fights where you're just like flying towards something or zooming around something. It's a lot of fun. However, to contrast that though, there is actually one of the dungeons in this game is the Temple of Time, and I despise it for multiple reasons. It's just, you know, the Temple of Time is such a big deal in the previous games, and here it's just treated as like dungeon and like so whatever. And what I really dislike about it is that the item you get in this dungeon is an item essentially used to control very specific statues. And I hate this when this happens in Zelda games where you get an item and it's only useful for that one thing, and outside the dungeon it's totally pointless. And that is the epitome of this. You get this item and you can use it outside in Hyrule Field to like find 2 pieces of heart, but that's it. I was like, you could have used this to like control other enemies or put them on your side or something, or use it as a projectile, but no, it just sucks. And the final boss of the Temple of Time is a callback to a previous kind of boss, and then it ends on like a comedic note. It's so bad. It's so stupid. It's so silly. I don't know. I've heard, you know, there's so many things I do like about this game though, so that's why I'm so conflicted. It's not the game that we expected it to be, but it's still a game that is not bad. And it's still a game that still has bad things about it as well. Something I hear a lot from some people is they get like halfway or 75% of the way through and they're like, I don't feel like I'm like beating it, I'm bored. There's just something about it that just feels kind of mid. And so as much as I want to like this game, it's really not on my top list of Zelda games. I mean, it's up there, I guess. I mean, there's Ocarina, Majora's Mask, even Tears, I think would be above this. But yeah, I don't know. There's just something about the story that is just kind of lacking, I guess. I have to admit, though, I did love messing around in Hyrule Field and fighting guys on horseback. I've probably already said that, but again, it's so much fun. It was wonderful, wonderful memories and experiences. I think it's also funny that in this game you can actually name your horse, and I've seen some very funny things that people have said. But aside from that, from a typical RPG, you can name every character, but in Zelda games you could only name yourself. But in this one, you can also name the horse. Again, I'm still kind of like mixed up as I'm looking back at this game because there's so many good scenes, there's so many good aesthetics, but the moment-to-moment gameplay and parts of the story, I guess they just don't fit in. It'd be interesting to combine the different good parts of each Zelda game and see what would come out of it. Another thing I also just generally don't like about this game is the fact that you have this little combo thing with arrows and bomb arrows, and you attach them, and there's specific underwater bombs and just really weird esoteric things you would only use once. I also need to bring up one thing that also really pissed me off about this game is the last temple. Not only is it hard to get to, you can soft lock yourself, it's filled with these disgusting bird creatures, but the item you get, I'm just going to spoil it for you, is a second claw shot. An absolutely useless item that is only used in that place alone and one other place outside to get a piece of heart. I felt like someone spat in my face hey, we gave you another one of the item you already have. This is the last temple, the last dungeon. You want to give the player something really cool to be oh, I can use this now in the open world, and it's no, here's literally nothing. It's so lame. It's funny, just reflecting as I talk about this game, there's certain things I love and certain things I absolutely hate about it. It's such a mixed bag that I guess that's kind of what the game is. I mean, it's definitely a Zelda game, and it's definitely, I would say, overall good. But it's just, I don't know, it misses the mark on what it feels like a lot of things. Anyway, guys, I think that's all I can really say about Twilight Princess right now. I think Midna is becoming more of the classic characters of the Zelda compendium. The Twilight Realm itself is really cool. A lot of the designs of this game are really cool. There are a lot of things in this game that are really cool and really well done, and a lot of things that I also just hate. It's a weird feeling to have, and I think that's why people are very mixed on this game, and it is a mixed Zelda. While the other ones, I can say 100% you should play them. This one, I mean, you should play it, but whether or not it's as good as the other Zeldas, that's really up for debate. I really can't say, and I'm not sure. Anyway, guys, that's all I have to say about this game, and I will see you guys later.